So Justin Gaethje just beat Paddy Pimblett this weekend at UFC 324 and is now the UFC lightweight interim champion. Justin had a lot of doubters who said that Paddy Pimblett was going to easily beat him to become the lightweight interim champion, but he proved all of those people wrong and put on an absolute banger performance with Paddy Pimblett. Now going into this fight, there were two clear narratives that we all understood. The first being that Justin Gaethje was an experienced person who's been tested amongst the very best in the lightweight division. However, the concerns of age catching up to him and the wear and tear that his body has gone through did have a lot of people concerned over him being able to beat Paddy Pimblett. But with Paddy Pimblett, we understood that he was a very unorthodox fighter who didn't have the best of striking or defensive capabilities, but was someone that was constantly improving each fight and had jiu-jitsu as his biggest asset when it came to fighting. Paddy is also the younger fighter out of both of them, so because of that, a lot of people thought that him being youthful, having speed, having the threat of submissions because of his decent jiu-jitsu was enough to beat Justin Gaethje. However, when you break down this fight, you can see that there were certain things that Justin Gaethje did that truly helped him to succeed against Paddy Pimblett. For example, he was always trying to put the pressure onto Paddy Pimblett whenever he could, which really worked for Justin Gaethje as it allowed him to put Paddy against the cage and land his best shots against him. By not allowing Paddy Pimblett to be on the front foot in most of the striking exchanges in the fight, it allowed Paddy Pimblett to not be able to use his best weapons against Justin Gaethje, which did really hinder his performance when it came to striking. Alongside his pressure, the use of dirty boxing did really help Justin in the striking exchanges against Paddy Pimblett. By tying up and framing Paddy and landing damaging shots on him was truly effective, as it's very unorthodox, and for Paddy Pimblett to deal with that was very difficult, so that's why it was a big strength for Justin Gaethje. Another thing is that Justin kept his hands up and used head movement, which was really useful as it allowed him to take most of Paddy's shots by just blocking it, and by using head movement it allowed him to evade, some shots that were coming towards his direction. The final thing that I noticed that Justin did really well in this fight was that he used wrestling, as by taking Paddy down and holding him, that did kind of tire him out a bit, and the use of ground and pound did cause him damage. We can clearly see that Justin did well in the fight because he had great defense. He put the pressure onto Paddy Pimblett with really good dirty boxing, and he mixed it up a bit with the wrestling. But when we look onto Paddy Pimblett, yes, there were some things that Paddy Pimblett did that were great. His kicks and knees were good as always, and there were some instances where he did sting Justin Gaethje. However, there were a lot of mistakes that Paddy made in the fight that really did cost his chances of getting the interim belt. Firstly, there was the lack of defense. He didn't really have his hands up, and there was a lack of head movement. If you aren't going to keep your hands up and have a good guard, you've got to utilize some sort of head movement so that you can evade shots coming towards your direction. But Paddy Pimblett just refused to do either of those things, and it did cost him, as it resulted in him taking unnecessary damage and getting caught and dropped multiple times. Another thing that cost Paddy in the fight was his overall striking ability. When you look at Paddy's punching ability, you can see that he's not the best when it comes to just straight up boxing. Yes, he can knee people, yes, he can kick people, but when it comes to just throwing straight hands and punches, it's just something that Paddy has always struggled with, which can be quite frustrating because Paddy has decent power in his hands and can sting people. As we've seen it in the fight with Justin, he did sting him in a few instances. So because of his bad technique when it comes to overall boxing, it does hinder his performance when it comes to striking, and you saw it in the fight, as there were many points where he got countered due to having bad technique. Now the final thing that really did cost Paddy Pimblett the fight was that he didn't really use his biggest asset, which was his jiu-jitsu. By not utilizing any takedowns so that he could maximize his jiu-jitsu, it just made the fight standing, and it was a horrible game plan from Paddy as he took away his best strength, his best skill, traded it to have a slugfest with Justin Gaethje, which was just a horrible idea. Paddy trying to have a stand and bang contest, having practically no defense, and limiting his use of jiu-jitsu cost him that fight against Justin Gaethje. So that being said, what's next for both fighters? So starting with Justin Gaethje, I'd say, well, he's now the interim champion of the lightweight division in the UFC, so he is set to face Ilia Topuria next, and I personally believe that that's a really bad idea for Justin Gaethje. He is someone that is getting quite older, he's not in his prime anymore, and Ilya is just getting better and better and is in his prime. When you look at how Ilya fights, how he's great at striking in terms of technique, power, speed, and he's decent at wrestling, and he's got that jiu-jitsu behind him as well, and compare it to Justin Gaethje's recent performance being against Paddy Pimblett, there's a lot of holes in Justin Gaethje's game. You know, his head movement is quite predictable and can be exploited by Ilya Topuria. We've seen in previous fights that his jiu-jitsu isn't the best and can get submitted on the ground. And when you compare Justin from 5 to 6 years ago to now, there is a massive difference in terms of his speed and athleticism. Justin hasn't really got long left in the UFC, and for his final fight to be against Ilya Topuria, which I'm predicting it now is going to be a very dominant win for Ilya in the first round via KO, it's just something I don't want to see happen to Justin Gaethje. You know, a guy who's given it his all in the sport and has dedicated himself and gave us many entertaining fights and a lot of highlight reel KOs. To see him getting brutally finished like that at the end of his career would be tough to see. For Paddy Pimblett, I'd say he's got to take some time off and work on himself. What I mean by this is that in this fight, it was quite clear that he has a lot of weaknesses in his game that he must work on. He's got to take some time to work on his striking, as his striking ability isn't the best. He's got to also work on that wrestling as well. Paddy has also got to focus on practicing his defense, as yes, we know, we've seen it from this fight that Scousers don't get knocked out. Taking damage is never a good thing, and in the long term that can build up and cause, you know, wear and tear on his body. By taking time to improve himself in other aspects in MMA like striking and wrestling, he can come back and be more better than ever before, and by implementing better defensive strategies, he can become a well-rounded, refined fighter. But that being said, in terms of possible matchups for Paddy Pimblett in the future, you could probably book him against Dan Hooker, as there is some beef against them too. You know, what Dan Hooker said about his mate who passed away and what Paddy Pimblett said about Dan Hooker's mother. So, you know, there's bad blood against both of them, and it could be a possible matchup that allows Paddy to come back after he makes those adjustments and improves himself and shows it on an opponent like Dan Hooker. But anyways, this fight as the main event to start off 2026 was a good one. You had a lot of great moments from both fighters, but you know, you also had some bad moments with some eye pokes from Justin Gaethje and some knees from Paddy Pimblett to the groin. But other than that, both men did their absolute best in the octagon. Justin showed that he isn't completely washed and can still hang with young and up-and-coming contenders like Paddy Pimblett, and Paddy Pimblett showed that he has grit, heart and determination. But anyways, that's been this video. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.